Come closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. Melanie Carter knew something was wrong before she understood why. It wasn't a sound, not at first. It was the quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't belong in a house with a child in it. No TV murmuring, no soft hum of movement, no footsteps. Just stillness. She stood in the hallway, one hand resting lightly against the wall, listening. The kitchen light buzzed faintly behind her. The glass of juice in her hand trembled just enough to make the ice tap softly against the sides.
Avery?
She called. Her voice sounded smaller than she expected. No answer. Melanie frowned, shifting her weight. "She's playing," she muttered under her breath, trying to shake off the feeling crawling up the back of her neck.
Hide and seek. Cute.
She stepped into the living room. The blanket fort sat in the center of the floor exactly where they'd built it. Couch cushions were stacked carefully, and pillows formed soft, sloping walls. A floral quilt draped over the top, dimming the space beneath into a cozy little cave. It looked normal. Melanie exhaled, tension easing slightly. Of course.
Avery,
she said, softer now, amused.
I know you're in there.
She took a step forward, and something rolled out from the darkness beneath the blanket. Melanie froze. A red crayon. It spun lazily across the hardwood floor before wobbling to a stop near her foot. For a moment, she just stared at it. Then she laughed under her breath, relief washing through her.
Okay.
She said, crouching down.
You got me.
She reached toward the opening of the fort and paused. There were more crayons inside, not scattered but arranged. They were neatly lined up along the floor like someone had been sitting there for a while. Melanie's smile faltered.
Avery?
She said again.
Avery.
No giggle, no shifting, no response. Just that same heavy quiet. Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the blanket. The fabric felt warm, too warm. She leaned down, lowering herself to peer inside. It was darkness, deeper than it should have been. The small space under the fort stretched farther back than the living room allowed, farther than it made sense. Melanie blinked, pulled back, and looked around the room. Everything was the same. The couch, the walls, the doorway behind her. Normal. Her heart started to beat a little faster.
Avery?
She whispered. A soft sound answered her. Not a voice, but a giggle. Faint. From deeper inside. Melanie let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding.
There you are,
she murmured, forcing a small smile. She set the glass of juice down on the floor. Then, slowly and carefully, she lowered herself to her hands and knees and crawled inside. The air changed immediately. It was thicker and warmer, The fabric brushed against her shoulders as she moved forward, the space tighter than she expected. Her hand pressed into the floor and sank slightly. Melanie froze. That wasn't carpet. She shifted her weight, testing it again. Soft, too soft. Like something underneath it gave, and then slowly pushed back. A faint whisper brushed past her ear. She jerked her head up.
Hello?
Nothing. Just the quiet and her own breathing. Except, it didn't sound right anymore. It echoed. Not forward, but behind her. Melanie's chest tightened. She glanced over her shoulder. Darkness. The opening she'd crawled through was already too far away and too dim.
That's not funny,
she said, her voice trembling slightly now.
Avery, come on.
Another giggle, closer this time. Melanie swallowed hard, forcing herself to keep moving. She fumbled her phone from her pocket, flicking on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark and revealed the tunnel stretching forward. Not a fort, but a corridor. Narrow, endless. The walls weren't just pillows anymore. They curved inward unnaturally, pressing closer the further she crawled. The fabric shimmered faintly under the light. Not cloth, but something else. Something that moved just slightly. Melanie's breath hitched.
Avery,
she called again, louder now. Silence. Then, a soft, dragging sound behind her. Melanie froze. Slowly, very slowly, she turned her head. The flashlight trembled in her hand as it swept across the tunnel behind her. Nothing. Just the narrow path she'd crawled through. Too narrow. Had it always been that constricted? Her heart slammed harder. She turned back and the light flickered. Once, twice, then died. Darkness swallowed her whole. No, she whispered, frantically tapping the screen. Dead, completely dead. Her breathing came fast now, shallow and sharp. Then, right behind her, something exhaled. Warm, close. Melanie's entire body locked. She didn't want to turn around. She knew she shouldn't. But something in her mind, something deeper than logic, forced her to look. Slowly, she turned her head and saw it. Not all of it, just enough. Eyes watching her from the dark, and a smile, too wide, too close, right behind her shoulder. Melanie opened her mouth to scream. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and something sweet that had been sitting too long under heat lamps. Trix liked it that way. It meant things hadn't changed. She sat in the corner booth, one boot hooked around the metal leg of the table, slowly stirring her coffee long after the sugar had dissolved. Across from her, Slade had her nose buried in a worn paperback, thumb holding her place like she didn't trust the world not to shift if she let go. Kylo was watching the TV. Of course he was. Local authorities are asking residents to remain vigilant, the reporter said, her voice calm in that too-practiced way. 19-year-old Melanie Carter and 9-year-old Avery Smith were reported missing late Friday evening, investigators have not released further details. Trix stopped stirring. In related news, officials are now looking into similar disappearances in surrounding counties, while no official connection has been confirmed. $20 says it's connected, Kylo muttered. Trix didn't answer. On the screen, a photo of Melanie flashed up, smiling, normal. Then it switched to Avery, school picture, front teeth slightly crooked. Trix's jaw tightened. That's a lot of people, Slade said quietly, not looking up from her book. Yeah, Kylo said. And no signs of break-in, no suspects. That's not normal. Nothing about this place is normal, Trix murmured. The bell over the diner door chimed. 2 officers stepped inside, shaking off the cold like it clung to them.
Found it right on the curb,
one of them was saying as they passed.
stacked up like someone just left it there. Couch, cushions, whole thing.
Trix's eyes flicked up. Forensics is running prints, the other replied. But there's nothing inside, no sign anyone was even. He stopped, noticed them listening, lowered his voice. Trix looked back down at her coffee. Kylo leaned forward slightly. That's weird. No, Trix said. Her fingers tightened around the mug. Weird is when something doesn't make sense. She glanced toward the window. The street outside was coated in that familiar gray-blue haze, fog clinging low to the ground like it didn't want to leave. This feels like something is making sense, she said softly. Neither of them asked what she meant. The TV flickered just for a second, the image distorted, and for that brief moment, Trix could have sworn she saw something behind the reporter. Not a person. A shape pressing inward. Then the picture snapped back to normal. Authorities urge anyone with information to come forward. Trix didn't look away from the screen. Her reflection stared back at her faintly in the glass. And just for a second, she thought she saw something move behind it. Kylo liked nights in Graves' Lot. The town felt more honest after dark. Less pretending, less noise. There were just long stretches of empty street, flickering lights, and that low, humming quiet that made everything feel thinner somehow. He pushed off on his skateboard, wheels humming softly against the pavement as he coasted past the diner's glow. Behind him, the door chimed shut. Ahead of him, fog. It wasn't thick, not enough to block the road, but just enough to blur the edges of things. Kylo smirked to himself. Yeah, he muttered. This is exactly how it starts. He adjusted his footing, rolling slower now as he turned onto a side street. That's when he saw him. A jogger. The man was moving at an easy pace up ahead, his breath steady and footsteps rhythmic. Normal. Kylo barely gave him a second glance until he heard a soft, out-of-place creak. Kylo slowed down as something rolled off the curb ahead of the jogger. It was a small, red shape. A tricycle, one wheel turned lazily, squeaking with each slow rotation, though no one was pushing it. Kylo's smirk faded. Okay, he murmured. The jogger stopped and looked around at the empty street and quiet houses. Then his gaze landed on the curb, and Kylo followed it. A pile of furniture sat stacked neatly along the side of the road. A couch, cushions, and blankets draped over the top. It was too neat, too deliberate. Kylo felt something tighten in his chest. The jogger stepped closer. "Hey," Kylo called out, instinct kicking in. "I wouldn't." The jogger didn't seem to hear him. He crouched down, peering into the dark opening beneath the blankets. The tricycle gave a soft creak behind him. Kylo's grip tightened on his board. "Dude," he called again, louder this time. "I wouldn't go in there." The jogger leaned closer, too close, and then he disappeared. Not quickly, not suddenly, but just gone, like he had leaned forward and simply kept going. Kylo blinked. What the hell? Silence swallowed the street. There were no footsteps, no sound of movement, nothing. Kylo stepped off his board slowly, his heart beating faster now. He moved closer, one step, then two. The opening beneath the blankets yawned wider than it should have been. It was too dark and too deep. Kylo swallowed. "Hello?" No answer. He leaned slightly to the side, trying to see inside, and froze. There was something just beyond the edge of the darkness. Not a person, but a shape, shifting and slowly moving toward the opening. Kylo took a step back, then another. His skateboard rolled forward on its own, right up to the edge, and stopped. Kylo didn't breathe. The blankets shifted slightly, like something inside had just leaned closer, watching him. Kylo grabbed his board and backed away fast. He didn't run and didn't turn his back. He just kept moving, slow and controlled, until he was far enough away that the shape disappeared into the dark again. Only then did he turn and bolt. Behind him, the tricycle creaked once more. Kylo wouldn't stop pacing back and forth across the diner lot. His boots scraped the pavement in uneven bursts like he couldn't find a rhythm to settle into. "I'm telling you," he said, dragging a hand through his hair. He leaned in and was gone, like he fell into something. Trix watched him, her expression unreadable. "You didn't go after him," she said. It wasn't a question. Kylo stopped just for a second before answering. "No." Slade closed her book slowly, her thumb still marking the page. "That's not something you follow," she said quietly. Kylo let out a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, no kidding." Suddenly, the streetlights flickered. All three of them looked up at the same time as a low hum buzzed through the air, subtle but wrong. Then everything steadied like nothing had happened. Trix exhaled slowly, her jaw tightening. "All right," she said. "We're walking you home." Kylo muttered that he wasn't a kid, but Trix replied flatly, "No, but you did just watch someone disappear into a pile of furniture." Kylo didn't argue. The three of them moved down the street together, their footsteps sinking without thought. Fog clung low to the pavement, wrapping around their ankles like it didn't want to let go. No one spoke until they reached his block. "That's it," Kylo said, nodding toward his house. Trix glanced at it. Dark, quiet, too quiet. "You sure you want to go in alone?" she asked. Kylo scoffed, but it didn't quite land. "I'll be fine." He stepped forward and froze. Something rolled out from the curb near his driveway. All three of them saw it. A skateboard. Kylo's skateboard, the very one he had been holding. It clattered softly to a stop in the street. Kylo looked down at his hands. They were empty. Slowly, too slowly, he turned toward the curb. A stack of furniture sat there. A couch, cushions, and blankets, all arranged neatly. It looked like it had always been there, but Trix knew it hadn't. "No," Kylo whispered. The blanket at the opening shifted just slightly, like something inside had moved closer. Slade took a step back, whispering Trix's name, but Kylo stepped forward. Trix tried to grab his arm, but he pulled free. "That's mine," he said, his voice tight. It came out of there. The opening looked small, too small, but the darkness inside felt deep and endless. Kylo crouched down. "Trix," Slade said again, sharper this time. But Kylo was already leaning in, reaching, his hand disappearing into the dark. And then he was pulled forward. It wasn't fast or violent. He was just gone, like the jogger, like he had always been meant to go. Trix lunged, but she was too late. Her hand hit the ground where he had been and sank slightly into something soft and wrong. The blanket shifted again, and the opening widened, inviting, waiting. Trix didn't hesitate. "Stay close," she snapped and crawled inside. Slade followed, and the darkness swallowed them whole. The air changed the second they crossed the threshold. It wasn't gradual or subtle. It was immediate. It was thick, warm, and utterly wrong. Slade's breath caught in her throat as the darkness swallowed the last trace of streetlight behind them. "Trix?" she said, but her voice didn't travel right. It folded as if the sound itself didn't want to move forward. "I'm here," Trix answered from somewhere ahead. "Stay close." Slade moved toward the voice, her hands brushing against the walls, but she recoiled instantly. It felt like fabric, yet it wasn't. It gave too easily under her touch, shifting slightly as if something beneath it moved in response. It felt alive. Slade swallowed hard. "Kylo?" she called out. Nothing answered her but the sound of her own breathing and something else, faint, out of sync, and coming from behind her. Slade turned. Darkness pressed in tight, the tunnel narrowing behind them in a way that didn't make sense. Had it always been that small? "Trix," she said, her voice sharper now. "Something's—" "I said stay close," Trix snapped. Slade stepped forward quickly and hit something low to the ground. She stumbled, catching herself just before her face hit the floor. Her hand landed on something smooth and rubber. A shoe. Slade froze, slowly dragging her hand along it. It was a sneaker, still damp. Her stomach twisted. "Trix." There was no answer. Slade's pulse spiked. "Trix?" Silence. The tunnel stretched ahead, empty. Trix was gone. There were no footsteps, no sound of her leaving. She was just gone. Slade's breathing turned shallow as panic crept up fast and sharp. No, 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 she muttered, scrambling to her feet. The walls shifted, not dramatically, but just enough. Closing in, watching. Slade backed away, and her foot hit something else with a soft clink. She crouched down slowly, fingers trembling as they searched the ground. Metal. A chain. She pulled it closer and realized it was a necklace. Her breath stopped as she felt the grooves of the engraving beneath her thumb. Melanie. Something wet coated the edges. Not fresh, but not dry either. Slade dropped it like it burned. "We're not alone," she whispered. The words had barely left her mouth before a giggle echoed through the tunnel. It was soft and close. Too close. Slade spun toward the sound and saw it. It wasn't a full figure, but a shape pressing outward from the wall beside her, like something was trying to push through. The fabric stretched, forming the outline of a face with eyes and a mouth that was smiling. Slade stumbled back, her heart slamming against her ribs. "No," she whispered. The face pushed further through and then snapped back into the wall. It was gone, and the tunnel went still again, silent and waiting. Slade stood frozen until she heard it. A voice, faint yet familiar. "Slade." Her blood ran cold. "Come find me." The voice echoed again, closer this time. She knew she shouldn't follow it. She knew that deeply. But her body moved anyway, drawn forward into the dark. The tunnel didn't end. It widened. That was worse. Trix stumbled forward into a space that felt almost like a room, if a room could breathe. The walls curved outward slightly, giving her just enough space to stand. She didn't like that. Standing meant she wasn't crawling anymore, which meant she wasn't moving fast, which meant she wasn't getting away. "Trix?" The voice stopped her cold, her shoulders tensed instantly. "No, not here. Not him." She turned slowly. He was sitting in the center of the room, exactly how she remembered, elbows on his knees, hands loosely clasped. A soft, familiar smile rested on his face like it had never left. "Took you long enough," he said. Trix didn't move, didn't breathe. "You're not real," she said flatly. He tilted his head slightly, that smile unchanging. "Does it matter?" Something in the way he said it made her stomach twist. The walls shifted, barely, closing in. "I'm not doing this," Trix muttered, backing up a step. "Not here." "You always run," he said calmly. Her jaw tightened. "Yeah," she snapped. "That's kind of the point." He laughed softly, the sound echoing wrong. Too layered. "You came back," he said. "I didn't come back," Trix shot back. "I got pulled in." Same thing. The room tightened again, closer now. Her shoulders brushed the walls. Her pulse hammered. "You always come back when you're scared," he continued. His voice hadn't raised or changed. That was the worst part. Trix shook her head hard. "No." He stood up, slow, unnatural, too smooth and too controlled. His smile stretched slightly. Just enough. Trix's breath caught. That's not... She started. His jaw shifted with a faint, wet crack. The smile widened too far. His eyes didn't blink or move. They just locked onto her. You don't get to leave this time, he said. The voice underneath his voice was deeper, wrong, and layered. Trix stumbled back, and the room shrank with her. The walls pressed in tighter, forcing her closer to him.
No,
She whispered. He took a step forward, his limbs lagging slightly behind his movement like they weren't fully connected. Another step, and he was closer than he should have been. There was no sound of movement, no space crossed. He was just closer. Trix turned and ran. The tunnel slammed back into place around her, narrow and suffocating as she scrambled forward on her hands and knees. Behind her, something moved fast. Too fast. A wet, dragging sound filled the space. She didn't look back, didn't dare, but she felt it getting closer every second. The walls pulsed as she crawled, pressing against her arms, her back, and her legs, slowing her, holding her.
Trix.
His voice was right behind her ear. She screamed and pushed harder, her hands slipping against the surface beneath her. Not fabric, but something slick and alive. Ahead, there was a flicker of light, small and distant. Trix lunged toward it, her fingers stretching just as something grabbed her ankle. It was cold, tight, and pulling hard. Trix kicked wildly, twisting and scrambling, her nails digging into the ground as she dragged herself forward. The grip tightened, yanking her back.
No!
She screamed, and then it let go. Suddenly, completely. Trix collapsed forward, gasping as the light vanished instantly. Darkness swallowed her again. Silence returned, heavy and waiting. Trix didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, far behind her, she heard it. A soft laugh, not her father's. Something worse. Kylo didn't remember when he started running, only that he couldn't stop. The tunnel stretched endlessly around him, shifting, tightening, and opening, never the same twice. At first, it had felt like everything he'd imagined. Liminal, endless, perfect. Now, it felt like something was watching him enjoy it. That was before it showed up.
Kylo.
He skidded to a stop. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. Dane, he said. The figure stepped out from the dim glow ahead exactly as he remembered. Same jacket, same crooked grin. Relief hit him so hard it almost knocked the air from his lungs. I thought I was the only one, Dane said. Kylo laughed breathlessly. Yeah, me too. Dude, this place is not that bad. Dane finished. Kylo blinked. What? Dane stepped closer with no footsteps and no sound. It's better if you stop trying to leave, he said. Kylo's stomach dropped. The tunnel shifted and the walls pulsed once, hard. No, Kylo said slowly. Dane's smile didn't change. He didn't move or blink. You wanted this, he said. Kylo took a step back. Not like this. Dane tilted his head, and that smile stretched just slightly. Something in his face shifted. Subtly, wrongly. "You always liked places like this," he said. Kylo's pulse spiked. Dane stepped forward and his face collapsed. It didn't happen violently, but his features simply sank inward as if the bone underneath had vanished. His eyes sank deep into his skull and the smile stretched too wide and too empty. Then, it moved fast. Kylo turned and ran. The tunnel snapped tight around him, forcing him low as he scrambled forward, breath tearing out of his chest. Behind him, something chased. Not crawling or running, but something worse. It was jerking and shifting, appearing closer each time he risked looking back until he finally screamed.
"Trix!"
His voice broke. Light, real light, flickered ahead. Kylo lunged toward it and crashed into something solid. Hands grabbed him.
"Kylo!"
It was Slade's voice. They pulled him forward, and suddenly they were all there together. Trix's breathing was ragged, and Slade's hands trembled. Kylo didn't look behind him. He didn't need to. They all felt it. Close. Watching. Waiting. "We don't follow anything," Trix said, her voice tight. "No voices, no light unless we all see it. We stay together." Slade nodded quickly and Kylo swallowed. "And if it follows us?" Trix didn't answer. She just grabbed his wrist. "Then we don't stop." The tunnel shifted and a new opening formed ahead. Wider, brighter, and wrong, but real. "Go," Trix snapped. They moved fast. The walls pulsed violently around them, closing in and pushing back. Behind them, there was movement. Multiple shapes. Too many. Whispers layered over each other, laughing, calling, and begging. They didn't stop or look back. The light grew closer and brighter until they burst through and hit pavement hard. Cold, real air slammed into their lungs. They scrambled up, stumbling back from the pile of furniture on the curb. The blanket fell still, silent and empty, as if nothing had ever been inside. The street was quiet, and fog rolled gently across the ground. It was normal. Too normal. None of them spoke at first. They just stood there breathing, alive.
"We made it,"
Kylo whispered. Trix didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the curb. Slade followed her gaze. There on the ground was a red crayon. Slowly, it rolled on its own toward the opening. The blanket shifted just slightly, like something inside had leaned forward, watching them. Trix stepped back.
"We didn't get out,"
she said quietly. The streetlight above them flickered once, then twice. And in the reflection of the diner window across the street, for just a second. They weren't alone.